Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Happy Thursday. My name's Peter Klein. Thank you very much for hanging out today. Coming up on the show, it is conference finals weekend in the NFL, so we're going to be previewing that. It is Naoya Inoue basically fight night. He is fighting at very early tomorrow morning, so we're going to be previewing that here on the live stream today for podcast listeners and YouTube watchers. Those are going to be two-part episodes here, but you're getting them early on twitch.tv/primetimePK. As always, this is presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca. Got the great hats here. Got the sweater in the background. We got an awesome Stampede Wrestling shirt as well. Plus, we are always fueled by Swift Energy. Check out swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. We got Toxic in the chat. We're chatting Flames already in there, so this affects none of you, but going to change things on the fly here, and instead of leading off with some NFL, let's lead off with some Calgary Flames. We got Deeds in the chat as well, so let's roll with some Flames talk, eh? So, the Calgary Flames, depth takes a gigantic blow as Walker Duehr is on his way to the San Jose Sharks by way of waivers. So, I tend to not try to get too worked up about some of these things because, I mean, Walker Duehr was a guy who, he's an easy one for fans to fall in love with, right? Because he is coming off of, he has this run, he has a name that you can make the jokes with, right? Like, oh, Duehr, I bet, and so, when he comes in, he is the type of player that you fall in love with. He skates very, very quickly, he goes crash, bang, bang, boom, and all of that, and it's a very, very fun time, and we all have a great time. The thing with him was that it kept getting worse the longer he was up. Right, like he would have this, he would have this boost, he would have this intensity, and then it would start to falter. And say, okay, we'll send him back down, calm him back up. All right, we got this boost, and everything's good, and then it starts to falter again. And there are but so many times you can roll through with that before you kind of got to realize that's probably just who he is, right? Like he is a guy who can come in, provide a quick boost of energy, and either teams figure it out or something happens internally with him, or whatever it is, and it doesn't end up really going the way that you would like it to. All these websites with different color schemes and whatnot really throws off the lighting of a show. But Toxic saying he doesn't have the brain to be an NHLer. That could be, right? Like, it could just be like okay, well, it's not clicking, so whatever, or whatever the case may be. But no, I think he is a fine fourth line energy guy, and I think he is a fine guy to take a shot with if you're the San Jose Sharks. But it's not like we're still trying to figure out, hey, what is Walker Duehr exactly? My guy's 27 years old, and that doesn't mean he can't figure it out or anything like that. But I think we're kind of at a point where we know what he is at this point. He has played 84 games in the National Hockey League. He has 19 points and 10 penalty minutes. He has 9 goals, none of which have come this year. And I don't know why it doesn't work with him. I don't know why a guy like that there's a consistency thing, because it's not like if it was a top-line player, and this is all being way more disrespectful to Walker Duehr than I'd like to be, but if it's a top-line player, then you can kind of justify it by saying, well, the rest of the league has kind of figured him out. I don't think there were deep, intense scouting game plans happening with the Winnipeg Jets trying to figure out, hey, what the fuck do we do with Walker Duehr? I don't think that's happening. So Deeds is saying it's a motivation to push himself up the lineup. I think that's it. I think that there is a level that he can get to playing his style at the American Hockey League, that there is a little bit more resistance at the NHL level as well. And I do think, to Toxic's point, there's a little bit of having to think your way through some things as well at the NHL level, where it can be a little bit more just read and react and just grip and rip it, man, at the in the AHL. It's tantalizing because in the AHL, this year, he's at 11 goals and he's basically a point per game. And 2 years ago, he was at 15 goals with 41 games played. down there. So he is a good AHL player, but I just don't think it meshes up here at the NHL level. And so to me, this is also part of what you are going through in a rebuild or a retool or whatever is happening here with the Calgary Flames. This is a part of it because you want to give players a chance. And I know in our minds that we like to think that it's just always going to work, right? It's always just going to click. It's always going to be great. You're going to give a kid a chance and he's going to progress. And one year he's going to get 5 goals. Then the next year he's going to get 15. And then the next year he's going to get that. And one part of it we have to realize is that sometimes it just doesn't work out. And I think for Walker Duehr, I'm not saying that it didn't work out. He could be a Flame playing that way for forever and it'd be fine. But you want to see what you have. And you know what you have in Walker Duehr. And to be perfectly frank and to be perfectly blunt, you can do what San Jose did. You can find a Walker Duehr on the waiver wire, right? Like you can find that guy any day of the week you want on the waiver wire. Derek Ryan on the waiver wire tomorrow. You can claim that guy. Boom, done. You can get that type of a depth thing. So why not open up that spot and see what you have in other guys who may have earned another opportunity? Enter Clark Bishop. The 28-year-old hasn't played in the NHL since the 21-22 season. He has 47 games played at the NHL level with 1 goal to speak of, that coming in his first year with the Carolina Hurricanes. This year with the Wranglers, he, like everyone with the Wranglers, is doing well. He is at 33 points in 39 games, 16 goals. So almost at like a half goal per game pace for the Wranglers captain. And so this is another one. Let's see what you got. He can play center. You can feel comfortable that way, that center depth is perpetually an issue in this organization. So give him a chance to see what you got in that guy and see what you can do with him. If he ends up just being another Walker Duehr, give the next guy a try. And I understand, like, oh, well, the depth of the organization is being tested out forward. And yeah, like they have lost some guys, right? The one that stings is Schwint. That's one. He's 24 years old. It feels like there's a little bit something extra there. And again, center depth being what it is with the Flames. That one was the one that stings. This one, I can't get too worked up about a guy who I think peaks as a third liner leaving. That's not going to be the thing that sets this team back or anything like that. It's worth taking a shot if you're San Jose and you're just kind of starting this thing going. But for the Flames, when you have a few other guys that you want to test out, you want to see what a Clark Bishop can do. And then down at the AHL level, you want to see what Stromgren can do, with more minutes. You want to see what a couple of those other guys can do with some more minutes. You want to see a bit of an enhanced role for a Klapka, getting a bit more of an opportunity down there. And so it's weird to say that a fourth line guy was in the way, but he is in the way of stopping someone else from moving up that allows another guy to push up. And we're at a spot with the Flames where there is at least a little bit of push up now coming from the back, and that is going to lead to these types of things. So I view this as a good thing. I think, again, like it would have been better if it worked out with Walker Duehr than for it to have not worked out with Walker Duehr. But I can't get myself to get too worked up about this sort of a thing. I was with with Toxic as well. I'm surprised it is Bishop. I thought Dryden Hunt had a good enough season down at the American Hockey League level that he gets a bit of a look. And obviously there's a chemistry there with Cairns and with Pelche. So give them a bit of a role. But again, I think that there are a number of interesting things that you want to look at. And for the Flames, you want to see, again, what all these guys have. And part of that is recognizing that some of them don't have what you're looking for, and you need to give other guys opportunities so you know how many spots you need to fill. We're getting to a point where trades could start happening soon, and I don't see the Flames dumping off a whole lot of assets, but maybe there are a couple of moves that bring in a couple of American Hockey League guys, and you want to know, where do we need to slot guys in here right now? And obviously the main one is center, but you want to see, like, is Stromgren, God, I hope I get that one figured out by the time he gets called up. Is Stromgren going to be a legitimate, like, top 6 guy? Or is he more a 3-4 guy? Let's try to figure that out so we can see organizationally what we need to do. So I think it's I think it's a fine move for the Flames, and I think it just shows that there is maybe a little bit more depth in this organization than we thought coming into the 2024-2025 season. As far as the on-ice product is concerned, the Calgary Flames are back in action tonight. They are taking on the Sabres of Buffalo. The Buffalo Sabres, a rebuilding hockey team perpetually, and that rebuild is going swimmingly this season as they currently sit dead-ass last in the Eastern Conference, coming off of a victory in their last game over the Vancouver Canucks, that one snapping a quick 2-game losing streak for them. For Calgary, the game is back at the Dome tonight. That matters not to the Buffalo Sabres, who are 9-12-3 at home and 9-12-2 on the road. So this is one where you win this game tonight if you're the Flames, right? Like you go out there and you pick yourself up a dub and you kind of move it on. We have Steinberg tweeting, looks like Clark Bishop will make his Flames debut tonight. Kevin Rooney, Joel Hanley, and Tyson Barrie working late after optional morning skate. They'll be healthy scratches. Dustin Wolf starts in net. So I like that you're giving Bishop a chance. Rooney has, I think, is another one that has kind of fallen off with a little bit longer of a run here. So give Bishop an opportunity, see what he has, and maybe that fills in a spot there. And then again, all of a sudden, Rooney is now a guy who maybe becomes a little bit expendable in that sort of a thing. And that's another thing where you get to see what you have in a center iceman here in Bishop, and can he be maybe a bit more of a cost-effective fourth-line player in that particular role. So I think for the Flames tonight, it is just go out there and treat a bad team kind of like a bad team and see if you can get a couple more points, try to create some separation in the standings. You got the Vancouver Canucks, who, as mentioned, on a bit of a slide, watched a little bit of my old friends' game over Vancouver last night, or the other night, after their loss against Buffalo, and there's a lot of concern about what's going on with the goaltending spot right now, as Thatcher Demko hasn't really figured it out. They got a matchup with the Oilers tonight, which I don't know if you've been paying attention, but that's kind of a thing right now, that this Oilers-Canucks whole shindig that's going on. I haven't talked about that a whole lot. That thing is stupid. The Oilers' reaction to that is that of a petulant child. Like, what? Oh, well, if I'm Connor McDavid, you want to suspend me? I'm just not going to play in your things anymore. It's like, oh yeah, no, that's great for the game. And so all of this, like, hey, they need to treat Connor McDavid like a star, and they need to really build up with that there's no reciprocating that. Hey, that, there's no, he needs to also try to help the league out and not cross-check human beings in the mouth. Like, it is so blatant. It is so dumb. He did it. He cross-checked the guy. This isn't like the Houston Texans and a roughing the passer thing that may or may not have happened. He up and smoked the dude in the face with his stick. That is a suspension. Can't be doing that. And so any other suggestion that goes against anything other than he should have been suspended is just you being a spoiled brat about things. So stop it. Because it's annoying and it's embarrassing to your entire organization, which is saying a lot for that organization. So anyway, I always remember these when they're like an Edmonton sports job pops up, sports talk. Oh, hey, maybe I could, you know what? I probably, if I'm going to do that, there's going to be a lot of deleting I'm going to have to do before I make a move up there. But why would I when I have a lot of fun down here? So anyway, that's what's going on with the Calgary Flames. Very winnable game tonight, and that is with or without Walker Duehr. It is now time to look at the NFL story as we are here. Conference Championship Weekend, the NFL's Final Four. We have a Cinderella story and two Goliaths going head-to-head in this the final part of this tournament. So, let's break it all down, shall we? There are now just 2 games remaining before we get to Super Bowl Sunday. The conference championship is here. We have a division battle in one and a familiar battle in the other. Let's start in the NFC with Washington taking on the Philadelphia Eagles. The Commanders are here after back-to-back upset wins over the Tampa Bay Buccaneers and Detroit Lions, while the Philadelphia Eagles have had a couple of wins that maybe were a little bit closer than they wanted to, beating the Green Bay Packers and beating Why am I? Oh, the LA Rams. There we go. Off to a great start, aren't we? So we broke this one down a little bit the other day in the upset special. How does Washington try to win this game? They try to turn this into the game they just played against Detroit over last weekend in the divisional round. They absolutely need this to be a game that is a shootout. They need this to be a game that Jalen Hurts has to win. He has to be the one to go out and steal this one, I think, for Philadelphia. That's what Washington wants to make them do. They have been able to come up with some big plays in the passing game and defensively. A couple big turnovers to really help offset some of the inefficiencies, we'll say, in their defensive game plan. But it's going to be a very, very interesting chess match because last week, a lot of what Washington was able to do, I think, is because of what Detroit wasn't able to do. And that is not, like, it's an amazing story. And I feel like I'm being kind of shitty about it with Washington. But the main thing here is that Detroit wasn't able to get a pass rush because Aiden Hutchinson was hurt. And then when they're not able to get a pass rush, Jaden Daniels is able to pick apart a significantly injured secondary. Now, there are injuries on the Philadelphia defensive side of the ball as well, but Jalen Carter is about 9x better than anyone Detroit had going in that game in the divisional round. So that is where this is going to be a bit more of a challenge, I think, for Washington, is there is going to be a lot more pressure in Jaden Daniels' face. And when he is escaping from that pressure and throwing it into a secondary, he is throwing it into a secondary that is significantly better than the one he was facing against the Detroit Lions and the Tampa Bay Buccaneers for that extent also. So that is going to be a real thing, is that Jaden Daniels, this has been a miraculous run, and it has been one of the best rookie seasons in the history of the sport. But he is now going up against a defense that, now, he has put up some numbers on them before, but he has also blown up some numbers against them before, you know? The 5 turnover game, not all of it his fault. I think Robinson had a couple of fumbles in that game. Now, they still won, so I mean, hey, what am I even saying? But this is a defense that is so different from what he has faced at any point here in the postseason that it is going to be a significant challenge, I think, for him. And he's passed these challenges all season long, right? Like they finished 4th in the league in EPA per dropback this year, 4th in the league just in EPA per play, 4th in success rate. They were 10th in DVOA overall. This was a good football team this year, but they are now facing a great one. The Eagles were 5th in DVOA. They were 1st in defensive success rate, 1st in defensive dropback success rate, and 3rd in EPA per dropback on the defensive side of the football. They are an excellent defensive team. And you have Vic Fangio on the other side, who is kind of coaching for his legacy, I guess, as well. We talked about storylines there. It didn't necessarily make the cut, but like there was a lot of flack on Fangio coming out of last year where the Miami Dolphins defense kind of crumbles late and it ends up costing them. But injuries were a significant part of that, but I do think that he wore a little bit of that. That has changed quite a bit. And a lot of people back on the respecting this guy bandwagon. I think that this defense is going to give Daniels a lot of issues this weekend. And that is why I am having a bit of a tough time getting my pick over to the Washington side of things. But what about when Philadelphia has the ball? The obvious thing is Saquon Barkley just runs it down their throat and there's no issues and everything just works out fine. Because they can do that, right? Like, they were 1st in the league in EPA per rush this season, and the Washington Commanders were 27th in defensive EPA per rush. So not a glorious matchup for the Washington Commanders by any stretch of the imagination. And it all feels like we're going to talk about fights a little bit later on the stream here. This all feels like a styles make fights sort of a thing, and a bad style matchup here for Washington. Last week was a perfect style matchup for them. This week, it just doesn't feel like you can get it to necessarily that particular mark. So like I just think it's a bad matchup right now because Washington's run defense is suspect and Philadelphia's run offense is sensational with Saquon Barkley and that offensive line creating all of those holes for that team and really causing some problems, I think, for the Washington Commanders. And so I don't know if they're going to be able to stop that. The one interesting part of it, and there is just that one little yeah but on both sides. It's Philadelphia's defense is really good, and they can probably do some really awful things to this Washington offensive line. Yeah, but Jaden Daniels is special, and he has an opportunity to do special things. On the offensive side, Washington, their offensive line is exquisite, and they can run the ball down anyone's throat, and Washington's really bad at defending the run. Yeah, but how much does Washington have to worry about Jalen Hurts? Because Hurts looked like he could barely walk at the end of that game against the LA Rams, and now he's had a week to get better, but that looked like something that could need months to get better, not weeks to get better. And so if you're Washington, at least early on, do you not just sell out to stop the run? Like, hey, see if Hurts can beat us. If he can, then we're fucked. And we're just going to roll with it and see if we can outscore these guys. But if he can't, then maybe we got something here. And so, again, this is one where the longer it stays close, the more it helps Washington because of those special plays that we have seen Daniels make in the last couple of weeks. And if Hurts isn't back to 100%, then I think Washington can keep this close. So that is what is kind of keeping me from just going all the way over on the Eagles are going to win this by 100 side. There's just enough little buts that I'm picking the Eagles to win. I'm picking the Eagles to cover, but this isn't like a stone cold like boom, yeah, lock it in, let's go. I'm not going that way. I think this is going to be kind of close, but I do think Philadelphia probably puts this one away late, and I do think Saquon Barkley puts up a pretty good game in this one. Just taking a look, trying to see what we have here for player props. Jaden Daniels, the one I was looking at was pass plus rush yards. It's at 283. That could be an interesting under. If you think Philadelphia is going to win this game, which, again, they very well should, then they're probably going to be limiting Jaden Daniels and having him under 283 in pass and rush yards. Not a bad look. Not a bad something to kind of keep an eye on there. But overall, yeah, Philadelphia -6 would be the way that I would be going for this game. Buffalo taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. The Buffalo Bills winning a classic last week against the Baltimore Ravens with a 27-25 win. While Kansas City is coming into this game at home again, hosting the AFC Championship game after a close-ish but not overly threatening loss against the Houston Texans, and one where, again, refereeing is the conversation, blah, 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 blah. Buffalo has a proof of concept. They have beat these guys before in the regular season. They have beat them in several regular seasons, though, and have not been able to get it done with the lights this bright in the postseason here. And you don't want to call back to that because these teams are always different and all of that. If they can turn this into a shootout, it's theirs, which is what they did in the regular season. They were able to turn this into another shootout. Both teams, it was in the 30s anyway, that the Bills had. And if they score 30, they're winning this game. Like that, Kansas City has been built to win those types of games in the past. They are not built to do that now. If this is a Buffalo Bills style of game, then the Buffalo Bills are off to the Super Bowl. But Kansas City's defense is really good at not letting that happen. Now, the stats would tell you maybe a little bit differently. They were 7th in defensive EPA per play this season, and they were a little bit more middle of the pack than in years past. And so while this is a vaunted defense, I do think it is one that is styled in a way that gives this team maybe a little bit of trouble. I joked the other day that Kansas City is really good at taking your number one weapon away. Well, they don't have that in Buffalo. They don't have a number one weapon in the passing game. They don't have that. Their number one weapon in the passing game is their quarterback who spreads the ball around a bunch. So if you want to double Khalil Shakir, fine. Keon Coleman will 8-yard slant your brains out. And Kincaid, same thing. James Cook in the passing game, same thing. You want it with Coleman, same thing with Shakir. Like they don't have a real number one, but they have a very versatile passing attack. And so that it gives me enough of a pause to think that maybe they won't be able to have this strong defensive day. And then again, it is also in the run game. Can James Cook get going? Can he be the one to put this offense in 2nd and 4, 3rd and 2 type of situations and make life very easy for Josh Allen to be able to pick this secondary apart? And then on the Kansas City side, obviously the Buffalo Bills defense was not overly strong in the second half of that game. They balled out in the first half, but in the second half, they showed that you can kind of run on them a little bit, or at least they were run on in that game by the Baltimore Ravens. Now, overall in the season, they finished 5th in defensive EPA per rush, so there is, I think, a bit more of an overall strength, and maybe it's just a tough matchup for Baltimore. And so the Pacheco part of it, or the Hunt part of it that they were able to get on the Houston Texans, I think isn't probably going to be as much of a threat this week. I think it was interesting how often, while there was some roughing the passers in there, it was interesting how often Houston's pass rush was able to get home last week. And Buffalo's, again, isn't that strong, but with Milano playing the way that he was, and they just have they just have enough guys in the pass rush that could give Mahomes a few issues. The more you think about this, the more that it feels like it should go Buffalo's way. There's a reason this spread is so close right now. But I just, like, there is nothing, when you look at how these teams have played this season, there is nothing that should lead you to believe that Buffalo shouldn't win this football game. Except the coach on that sideline is one of the best to ever do it. And the quarterback under center over there is probably the most talented to ever do it. And he's throwing it to one of the best tight ends to ever do it. Like, there is just this aura and this other level around this team. And they are at home, and they're so good at home. So there is, like, Buffalo is almost playing against history more than they're playing against this Kansas City Chiefs team. But Allen has never played this good in his career. And the Chiefs have, while they felt vulnerable last year, the Chiefs haven't really felt this vulnerable from a just on-field product than they have this year. And so I have been saying all along, Kansas City, like, I'm going to pick them till they show me that they can't. And I'm going to pick them till they show me they can't, and all those different things. But the more I talk myself around this game, the more it just feels like this is Buffalo's time. And I know many generations of sports talk hosts have fallen into a trap of thinking, well, now is Buffalo's time. But I just feel like this is it. I just feel like this is the one that they get on the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm going to say Buffalo covers. I mean, that gives me a bit of wiggle room because it's 2. But I think the Buffalo Bills are going to pull off the upset, and they are going to move on to the Super Bowl. And with my pick, it'll be against the Philadelphia Eagles. So that is what I think will happen in the conference championship games. The teams that aren't playing in the conference championships have a lot of decisions to make. Let's look at the offseason ahead for the teams that lost in the divisional round. The NFC and AFC conference champions will be crowned this weekend. The teams that didn't quite make it to that game have a lot of decisions to make to try to get over the hump and into these games 365 days from now. So, let's try to help them get there. Here is the off-season preview for the teams that were eliminated in the divisional round. We will start with the Houston Texans. I think the big issue here is the offensive line. CJ Stroud was sacked a lot. Now, a big part of that is wide receiver. They couldn't get anyone open, and because of that, Stroud's holding the ball a ton, and because of that, he's getting sacked a bunch. Like, he held the ball too long, simply held it too long against Kansas City. You need guys who can get open, but you also need an offensive line to give him a little bit more time than what he had. So, Stroud needs to be better in that way, the receivers need to be better in that way, but the offensive line really needs to be better. And so I think that is a main priority for this team. As wide receiver is too. I think you have to assume Dell is going to be out a while. That was a pretty horrific injury. I would be surprised if Stephon Diggs is back. I think you need a real, reliable number 2 receiver who is just a get open guy. And can be a bit more of a reliable 2nd and 8, 3rd and 6 type of a guy who can just keep the chains moving. and help your offense out that way, and let Nico Collins be the superstar number one wide receiver and get all of the attention. It does seem like they may lose a little bit of steam in the pass rush in free agency, so that might also be an area that they need to address. But I think the defensive side of the football is pretty fine. It's just kind of stacking up for what may be lost in free agency. On Detroit, clearly depth on defense is a bit of an issue. Aiden Hutchinson getting hurt, obviously, like, significantly decreased their chances and significantly impacted their defense. But it's what we talked about with Detroit last year when TJ Watt went down with an injury. And it's, okay, well, the defense sucks now, but that's because TJ Watt went out. It's like, hey, maybe our defense shouldn't hinge on one guy. Let's just think that way, shall we? And so they go out and get Patrick Queen, and hey, look at that, the defense is really good again. I think Detroit needs to get a little bit more in the pass rush than just one dude, because Aiden Hutchinson going down is obviously a significant loss, but that should not forever alter your pass rushing game. So I think Detroit needs just a little bit more help in the pass rush there. They need at least one dude in the defensive backfield as well. They need a little bit more help and a little bit more depth in the secondary, but I do think they need another playmaker back there to help come up with a few big plays. And then the last one here, it's different for them than it is for a couple of these other teams. They're going to need to find an offensive play caller that matches up with Jared Goff and the strengths of this team in a way that Ben Johnson did. It felt like Johnson and Dan Campbell really did have a bit of a mind meld that included a Jared Goff in there as well. And he offensive coordinated in a way that really meshed with the attitude that Detroit was looking for and the aggressiveness that Detroit was looking for. And it was in a way that really did seem to enhance what Jared Goff has as a quarterback. That is a difficult thing to find again. And so, but it is at a crucially important time for this team, as it does seem like the window starting to close a little bit out in Detroit. So they're going to need to get that pass offense back to where it was, and finding an offensive coordinator to do that will not be easy. The LA Rams, they actually have a pretty good young core building on the defensive side of the football. We said this in the game recap on Monday. It just felt like anytime someone was making a play, it was, oh, hey, there's that rookie. Oh, there's that rookie. Oh, there's that young player out of whatever. Like, they have a pretty good young core going. I do think you need another linebacker, like a real playmaker at the linebacking core, and then probably one in the secondary as well. Like, they feel like they're a couple of guys away from this defense being a real problem again out in Los Angeles. Offensive line was an issue. They ranked 20th in pass rush win rate as an offensive line. I don't know how I can not say pass rush sometimes, but I get pass rush win rate nailed. But either way, basically bottom third in the league when it came to that category. That's something that I think needs to be addressed when you have a relatively immobile quarterback in the backfield there. The offensive line, I do think, needs strengthening up. And the offseason discussion around Cooper Kupp is probably not going to be favorable to the veteran wide receiver. I do think that there is probably a need for another playmaker in the pass catching game out in LA. And in Baltimore, they need to address the defense. They didn't have much of a pass rush. That definitely needs to improve. Also, they didn't have a great secondary, so that needs to improve. So they need a few guys on the defense to really bolster things and get that going. Ronnie Stanley is a free agent. You either need to keep him or find a elite level replacement, because that is such a big part of what this team is doing. And I do think it is time to get Lamar Jackson a real number one wide receiver. Zay Flowers might end up being that. Him being hurt for the playoffs, I do think was a significant downgrade. But if you can get a real number one in there, then this team just goes to an entirely other stratosphere and allows them to really control things, I think, in a way that would just simply be scary for other teams. So those are the the off-season previews for the NFL teams that didn't make it to the conference championships. Now, there are some teams who really didn't make it to the conference championships. We got a couple new coaching hires and we have a new coaching hire anyway, and a couple general manager decisions that need to be addressed. So let's talk about them. It is coaching season, coaching change season, and apparently GM change season in the NFL. Let's start with the new coach out with the Jets, Jets. It is Aaron Glenn going back home. I think this is a good move for them. I do think that if you're going this way, and I'm not in the interviews, so I don't know, I do feel like if you're going defensive coach, Brian Flores is probably the better option, in my opinion, just from what we have seen. We haven't seen Aaron Glenn, we haven't seen Aaron Glenn coach yet. So it is tough to judge that, but I do think Brian Flores, with how he was able to coach that defense up in Minnesota, the culture that he was trying to build out in Miami with significant resistance coming from ownership, and now getting a chance to kind of stick it to them would be, I think, a pretty fun thing for him to do. But Aaron Glenn, it didn't end really well for him with the Lions because of all the injuries and stuff like that, but they are looking for someone to come in and set that culture the way the Lions have. And it's weird still to talk about the Lions as the team that everyone is holding up as this cultural gold standard right now, but that is the guy that is kind of the system they're trying to do. They want to turn this thing around and turn this thing around very, very quickly. The one issue that you're going to have is you brought in the coach before the GM. So that's weird. And you would assume that there's going to be some symmetry there with whoever the general manager is that is brought in, but it doesn't seem like the order of operations is necessarily the way that it normally is with these particular decisions. So that is a bit of a surprising one out there. And also you have an owner who is not necessarily hands off, shall we say. It's a bit of a difficult situation that Aaron Glenn, I think, is walking into. Right away, accountability is a major problem for this team. And it has been for a really long time. And the guy who was supposed to change that was totally fine holding everyone else but himself accountable. Well, Aaron Glenn now has to hold everybody accountable. He is walking in probably without a quarterback as well. So any suggestion that this should be a quick fix for him is asinine. It's not going to be. They're going to need a couple of years to get this thing going. But the big thing right away is holding these players accountable and kind of setting that culture there. But he is not walking into a complete blank canvas either. Like the reason everyone was excited about Aaron Rodgers going to the Jets is the rest of the roster is really good. And maybe it's not as good as we thought it was going into last year, but there is a pretty strong foundation there. If they get the right quarterback, then it does help turn things around pretty quickly with the Jets. So overall, like it's a C+ move that does have the potential to move up because we just haven't seen Aaron Glenn do it before, but he has been at the helm of some pretty good defenses in the NFL. Trent Baalke is out with the Jacksonville Jaguars. The timing of this is very strange. Like, what's changed? You know, like we knew he was a bad GM when the season ended. So why, like a couple of GM hires have already been made. Why are you doing this now? The only thing I can think of is that there was with all of the coaching meetings and everything like that, they were saying like, what would maybe keep you from wanting this job? It's like, well, you have a lame duck GM who has been able to fire like 8 coaches, and I don't want to come into a spot where I think the GM's going to be fired in a year, and now maybe I'm not the guy with the general manager that you bring in. So maybe it was coming up in every coaching decision that they were making, and that was becoming a problem for them. But the timing of it is just very, very strange to me. He is not, this isn't a unjustified move. It is simply the timing of it that I find a little bit surprising. But now the new GM, I mean, the only pressure that he has is trying to maximize things around what was supposed to be a franchise quarterback who is looking more like a middle-of-the-road quarterback. And you have to hire a coach there as well. So you have to get this exactly right, basically right away. This isn't you know what, I'm going to come in, I'm going to find my guys, and we're going to progress some things. It is, you have to come up here in your first at-bat and hit a grand slam. And we don't even know if you have all the people out on the bases to hit a grand slam, but you have to figure out how to hit a grand slam anyway. And it does not seem like it is a very exciting opportunity unless you can get it to work. Like, if you can do it, then you turn a franchise around, you turn a franchise quarterback around, and you actually have a pretty good base there. It is all about trying to maximize what you have in Trevor Lawrence. And the Vegas Raiders hiring John Spiddick as their new general manager, formerly of the Tampa Bay Buccaneers organization. It is 2025, and this is now the 5th general manager hire for Mark Davis since 2020. Now, that does include interim GMs, but still, Jesus. talking about walking into a bit of a blank slate, that's basically what you have here. There is Max Crosby, there is Brock Bowers, and a few other dudes, and that's it. There is a lot of work to be done in Vegas. Because of a couple of wins late in the season, you have the 6th overall pick. And so your first job is to figure out the quarterback spot, because I truly believe that not having a quarterback in place is probably what cost them Ben Johnson. Because I would much rather go into things having to attack the NFC with Caleb Williams than I would try to figure out my own division featuring Herbert, Nixon, Mahomes with Aiden O'Connell in the 6th overall pick right now. So they need to figure out that quarterback spot, but they also kind of need to figure out just the rest of the roster. So it's an interesting spot to go into for Spiddick, who has been around a lot of good organizations. He's got to find the right coach and just about 40 of the right players. And this team will be on their way. But like I said, it is a bit of an interesting spot and would be a tantalizing one if you consider yourself a team builder in the NFL. So that is the sportsy story of today's podcast. For podcast listeners, this is going to be the end of part 1. As always, presented by Sea of Dead. Check out seaofdead403.ca for all your great Calgary swag. We are fueled by Swift Energy, swiftenergy.gg. Use the code PKPrimetime for 25% off. Part 2 of the podcast, we are going to be looking at fights to make coming out of UFC 311. We are going to be looking ahead to Naoya Inoue's big fight, big-ish fight, this weekend, in just a matter of hours, as he steps back into the squared circle out in Japan. Plus, AEW had Dynamite last night, and WWE has Saturday night's main event this weekend. So all of that is coming up in part 2 of the podcast.